Hey guys! So, today I'm going to share a few experiences with you that I hope can motivate some of the claims that I've made in the past about what I think should be considered useful things to know when you work when you spend quite a lot of time working with front-end related things or with JavaScript in general. So let's get into that. So, one of the most common discussions that I have with various people on the internet is, Frederick, how can you say that this and that are considered front-end related issues? That's really more back-end heavy stuff. It's the sort of thing that I don't really have to deal with. And among these things are things such as rendering, things such as server-side, and understanding of the server-side, understanding memory, understanding performance, and all of these good sorts of things, right? Because from the perspective of the people that I sometimes talk to, the term front-end, or that term, is more associated with UX, design, JavaScript, HTML, CSS, and a very heavy UI focus, if you will. But I want to touch on a few things that I've been doing in the past few weeks that hopefully can illustrate my perspective on these things. Because although it is absolutely true that quite a lot of time when you work with JavaScript related things, you spend that time usually in some type of framework somewhere, doing something like that. But once you get a little bit established in your role the funny part is that I'm still just living off of legacy, because I used to do this full time, and these days it's not my specific role, but the fact of the matter is that so few people know how to do these sorts of things that most of the time it falls on me to take care of it. Go figure, right? That also ties into something I've said before, guys. The first things that you get really good at, or the stuff that you start out with and you get a little bit of knowledge on, if you get really good at that, it very often becomes the case that you stay there because you're already good at it, so people want you to take care of it. So diversifying yourself can sometimes get a little bit tricky. But when I talk about these sorts of things, I share some of the thoughts I have based on previous experiences. Not only mine, but also which experiences of people I know who have been doing this for quite a while, and the sort of things that they have to do. Like, an example is that I had this one person who said that there's no reason, like, this was a hilarious one from my perspective. They said that a front-end developer shouldn't have to know which NPM packages to use or how to use Node. And I kind of just stood there and I say, well, how are you going to deal with memory issues related to, say, Webpack or Gulp? Because I know for a fact that most of the front-end developers at my previous job, they were involved with building a full-stack application which was designed to allow theming and produce theme strategies for the main product. And that was all done using Node, JavaScript, React, that sort of thing. And having the idea that you don't have to know which NPM packages to use, I mean, that's just weird. It's like saying that you don't have to know what dependencies are. Of course you have to know that. It's obvious to anybody who does this full time. And I had a similar discussion with rendering, for example, where, all right, do you have to understand that sort of thing? And I said, yeah, I think so. And the reason why I say that is because it's a fundamental part of doing that sort of work. Because not every single application that you build is going to be a pure SBA experience. Some people, especially those who spend quite a lot of time in CSS, work on sites and applications that are server-side rendered. And if you don't understand that, can get really tricky for you to contribute to such a project. And then you have, like, just the other day I was working on a story where I needed to provide some environmental context to the web application, and in order to do so I needed to virtually render in a dynamic value, or well, it was a static value that could be deduced at build time into the DOM. And the common practice for doing such a thing is to put, say, a configuration object or a variable or something like that on the window object in like basically right into a script tag on the page. And doing that was really the only feasible way for us to be able to communicate to the React application which context it was in. There was no other way for it to be inferred. Once again, this is experience talking, guys. It's not just a random person who claims something. This is something I can actually tell you, I can prove to you that this is the case for when it comes to doing this sort of work. The past days, another common one, which I think is also really interesting, is that, let's say, for the sake of argument, that you're using more tools related to JavaScript than just, you know, an SPA framework and some basic, I don't know what tools you're using, but let's say for the sake of argument that you have a build pipeline that may or may not leverage Node, or in this case it was Webpack. What will you do when you have a performance issue with Webpack? It's not my favorite task in the world, but the past few weeks that has been an issue. And since I'm the front-end person, regardless of how you want to define that, that task falls to me. And that means having a very intimate understanding of memory usage, heap allocation, and of course knowing how to use a debugger and a profiler so that you can walk through take heap snapshots, for example, understanding how that works so that you can figure out what memory is being consumed and why it's not being released correctly. And by doing that, which is a fairly tedious process, you finally understand that, oh, there's this one plugin that somebody added and it has a leak. And either you can upgrade that or you have to remove it, and then you get a slight performance benefit or something, you know, the memory allocation goes back to something a little bit more normal, and then you do it again and again and again until there are no more leaks. These are the sorts of things that I mean when I talk about that front-end development is not, and I repeat, it is not just about the UI. There are tons of things around it that will be required of you to know. And you don't really have the option of just saying that, oh no, I don't know this, because it's expected of you. And I mean, it would be great if all these problems weren't around and we had an easier way of working, but that's kind of the lay of the land. And your experiences may differ, but I can tell you for a fact that there are quite a few companies where this is the rule rather than the exception. And you should, in my opinion, be aware of that, and you should prepare for it. I'm not trying to tell you what to do. I'm just saying that, just as a personal coach, I would rather give you the reality of something as opposed to tell you some bunch of either lies or something that is some type of idealistic case by somebody who doesn't really work in the way that the industry has standardized on. And I'm just saying that regardless of how you feel about it, this is the way that the industry, quite a few companies actually think about it. Front-end today, for most companies, does not mean that you simply do UI work. It means that you are a master of JavaScript. Pretty much. And not just JavaScript. Everything that is related to the UI level. All the way back to the build pipeline. Have a great day.